evening, everyone, and welcome to a ambush stream. Yes, an ambush stream on a Friday night. I'll explain why. Early this morning, like literally early this morning, 1 a.m., I was awakened by the sound of the neighbors upstairs stomping around or something. I swear somebody up there works a graveyard shift or something and decides to start making breakfast at 1 in the morning every other night or so. But either way, I was woken up in such a way that I just was not getting back to sleep because the noise was persistent. To be like, you'd hear somebody clunking around in the kitchen and they go quiet for a minute. And then just when I think I'm going to like maybe go back to sleep, there's more noise. And so it just, I was awake. So I was awake at 1 a.m. And so I decided to be productive. I started continuing work on a project from work that I could work on without it being business hours. And so I spent about, 3 hours doing that until it was actual work time. And then I did work and I was up all day. And then I took a nap. Wasn't much of a nap. And here I am at the time around which my body says, hey, it's time for bed. You got work in the morning, even though it's a weekend. But I'm in that sort of zombified, sleep-deprived, energized zone. And I thought, well, I'm awake. I'm here. I have a backlog of interestingly titled videos to look at. So why not? Friday night special. Here we go. But who's joining me for this ambush stream? Unplanned, unadvertised, save for about 10 minutes worth of notice. And for those of you that are, wanted to catch this live and listening in the future, I apologize, but this is how ambush streams work. It's just when the thought strikes, that's when it happens. But yes, who is joining me? Otho May. Good evening. Asan. Good evening. Attack Alpaca. Good evening. A little late, so I'm heading to bed, but have a nice stream. I'm sure it will be bleaching. I'll see myself out. Well, thank you, Attack Alpaca. Hope you have a good rest. Ryan R. Good evening. Rosie Universe. Good evening. Corey Suzuki. Good evening. North of. Good evening. Sabian 187. Good evening. And of course, Derek LaRue. Good evening, and thank you so much, as always, for your continued support and generosity. Really do appreciate it. Hope you're having a good evening and enjoy the show. Robert Pincus, good evening. Ercole De Stefano, good evening. Eldemis, Eldemis, or Eldemis, could go either way. Good evening. Officer Buck, Tud Russell, thank you so much and good evening. With the Hey You pair, appreciate it. Thank you. Funtime Bats, thank you so much for the donation. Hi, Scribe, working now, but I'll watch in full later tonight when QT slows down. Well, I hope it slows down soon because Friday night should be relaxing, ideally. Chicago Mike, good evening. And for anybody that might be lurking or in the future, I don't think I missed anyone. Good evening. All right, so yes, the title of tonight's presentation: Mobilizing White Identifying Investors for Racial Justice. How can you get them white people to give you money? I'm guessing there's going to be heaping handfuls of guilt, maybe, of one form or another. I'm sure we'll find out. Keldrig, guten Abend. Ja, Herr Keldrig. Und wie bist du? Ich bin ein Kartoffelsalat. Ja? Ivor Sigatorix. Good evening. Midnight stream? Not quite. I mean, unless you're an hour. Is there an hour time zone more east than the East Coast? Then maybe. White identifying, says Rose Universe. Yes, I know. It's like, what does that mean? White identifying? I don't know. I mean, either they are or they're not. And either way, the money presumably is about the same color, green. So anyway, this comes to us from something called Camelback Ventures from July 25th, 2023. I cut off, there was this long bit at the beginning where there was nobody was talking, and then they did like a little introduction thing of like, if you'd like to leave a question for our panel or something later. So I just cut that out. But otherwise, it's the full presentation. If for some reason you'd like to see the unedited version, the link is in the description. Also, before I begin, at the top of the chat box, if you have the opportunity, please take a look at the GoFundMe's up there for our friends James Colley, Maddie, Angry Illinoisian, and the fourth person who suddenly I forget for some reason, Grisella, pardon me. For various reasons, medical, personal tragedy, and otherwise, they could all use some help if you can provide it. If you can donate, please do so. If you can't, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That would be appreciated. Also, good evening to Devil Fruit Zero. Hope you're doing well. And no, it wasn't tomorrow. It's tonight, whatever. Anyway, I'll go for, I don't know, hour and a half until I get tired, or depending on how this goes. This one clocks in just under an hour. So let's find out how to mobilize white identifying investors for racial justice.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. We're super excited to have this session, Mobilizing White Identifying Investors for Racial Justice, with our partners, Camelback Ventures. I'm just going to give a quick intro to StartOut in case this is your first StartOut event. And then
this is my first StartOut event, so good. I could do with a 101.
I'm going to pass it over to the Camelback team for them to kind of get into the session.
Okay.
So StartOut's mission is to accelerate the growth of the LGBTQ+ community, working to drive its economic empowerment, building a world where every LGBTQ+ entrepreneur has equal access to lead, succeed, and shape the workforce of our future.
Okay, so it is a sexual orientation and or gender identity based financial investment firm, I suppose. Okay. Oh, is that what the out is in StartOut? Is that it? The whole out thing? I'm out. Is that it? I'm guessing.
And I can talk a little bit on the next slide about some of our programs and the impact that we've had so far. So StartOut has our own accelerator program. It's called our Growth Lab. It's the only LGBTQ+ specific accelerator, with our 56 graduated companies raising over $756 million in funding.
Wow, $756 million in funding. You could buy like 2 production budgets of the Marvels with that. Also, good evening, Dina B. Hope you're doing well. All right.
We also have a mentorship program with over 300 mentors participating at any time for 6-month placements. We also have an expert office hours program.
Wow.
And a network of 300 investors who participate in our Access to Capital program. And
is there a racial test for the investors that are allowed to work with your program? I mean, I'm just looking at the title of this thing.
Deal flow. I know many of you are the folks who are on the call today, so thank you for that. We also have our own private forum and community events just like this one all year long.
Oh, good.
And all of those programs that I just mentioned are made possible by our valued corporate sponsors.
Ooh, look at that list. Let's see. Comcast, NBC Universal, JP Morgan Chase & Company, Coca-Cola, eBay, Google, UPS, Visa, AT&T, Amazon Web Services, BNY Mellon, Bank of New York Mellon, AARP, G/ whatever that is. We're getting down into the lower tiers here. JustWorks, Ogilvy, Oric, Snapper, and then in very tiny print, City something Ventures, or I can't tell. Then something, then Foley, then Found LA, something LS, Plug and Play, Twillo, UBS. I did a couple of videos on UBS. They're great for helping their clients avoid tax laws and things. William something, and then I can't tell. DLA Piper, Outshine, and Socos Labs, or I can't tell. Anyway, and their tiers of support are steel, platinum, gold, silver, bronze, and in kind. Steel is above platinum? If you say so.
So they're up on the screen now, and we just want to thank them for making this event and our events and programs throughout the year possible. And now I'm very excited to stop talking and hand it over to the Camelback Ventures team. We've been working with Camelback for a few years, sourcing founders and entrepreneurs in our programs for their fellowship program and making referrals that way. And so when we found out about their new Capital Collaborative program and the ways they're looking to address continued disparity in funding opportunities.
Disparity, you say? I love disparities. Because obviously a disparity inherently indicates an inequity, right?
Really excited to work with them to bring that to our funding community, because we feel like it's really valuable. It's content that we haven't been able to provide in the past, but know that funders should have access to. So yeah, I'm super excited to hand it over to the team. They'll introduce themselves from there. And thank you so much for being here today. We're really excited to have you all.
Well, I'm very excited for you to be excited to have me here. Camelback Ventures Capital Collaborative Mobilizing Session. Serve, advocate, and educate. Oh, all right.
Thanks, Kayla. I'm really excited to be with y'all as well.
Y'all.
And thank you for welcoming us. I'm Hannah Whistler. I use she, her pronouns. And
I'm glad to know your oh, wait, I don't care.
I am the senior lead on the Capital Collaborative team at Camelback Ventures. And we'll talk a little bit about how those two work together in a minute. But would just invite y'all in the chat if you haven't already. And if you had, feel free to add your answer to the last question. Just make sure to share your name and your role if you want to share where you're calling in from. And then would love to hear, since it is the season, and I personally on my dog walk this morning enjoyed my fair share of the very first blackberries that are popping up. I'm on the North Oregon coast.
Okay, just for those of you that are listening at home, there's a card up right now that says, introduce yourselves in chat with your name, your role, what's your favorite summer produce or seasonal treat? Well, obviously it's the pumpkin spice latte. No, it isn't a seasonal treat. I don't know. I guess a seasonal treat is when I visit my parents' place for our little Christmas celebration, and she makes homemade cocoa with like cocoa powder and the whole 9 yards. And I only have it once a year when we go do that. So I guess my mother's homemade hot cocoa is my favorite seasonal treat. What's my name? Scribelight. What's my role? Moonbase administrator.
I want to know your favorite summer produce or seasonal summer treat. So just go ahead and drop that in.
Summer treat. Sorry. I thought it was, seasonal treat. I was thinking a seasonal treat. Okay. Summer treat. I don't know. I don't know that I have a summer treat. Anyway, my mind is on the current period of time, not when this was broadcast.
In the chat.
Yeah.
As y'all do that, I'll just share that like our time together is limited today. So knowing that we just won't be able to engage in discussion as much as we would hope. That's one of my favorite things about the Capital Collaborative programming we provide is just the opportunity for group discussions, small groups, big groups, one-on-one, and really getting to like get into it with each other.
I love getting into it. That's why I do these things to a certain extent. Thank you, Corey Suzuki. Is summer produce a fancy way of saying ice cream? Yes. Because as we know, ice cream grows on trees. Ice cream trees. I think that was part of Baron Munchausen's presentation, wasn't it? Maybe. I don't know. Or was it cucumber trees? Maybe it was cucumber trees. George Mason. Good evening. Datura Jones. Good evening. Thank you for joining us with this Mobilizing White Identifying Investors for Racial Justice. We're just beginning.
So just know there is a bit of time for that. We're going to have a short time in pair breakout rooms later.
Okay.
But if you're yearning for that, that is something that's very like baked into our programming and most of the programming we promote just because we think it's really important to have discussions as we learn together.
I love learning together. Please. Are we going to get to the presentation? I should have cut this out. Oh, well, I didn't know it was here.
But we have a short hour together today. So if it's a bit
so stop dilly-dallying and get on with it.
More sit and get. We apologize, and we hope you're still able to get something from it.
Okay.
So thanks for sharing. Ripe tomatoes. Yes, Logan, my friend sent a picture of some that her dad dropped off from their farm. We're not
Oh, how cute.
Not quite in tomato season in Oregon yet. So I'm just
That's
seeing
great.
an envy, at least on the coast.
We have a short hour together, right?
A little behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And I'll let y'all continue to drop those in, but I'm going to continue in the interest of time with our agenda and opening.
Okay.
So today, after this opening portion, we're going to get into what the value of white folks doing racial justice works.
Well, according to the title, money. What is the value of white folks or white identifying folks? Money.
Specifically in funding is. So that is the target audience today. And those are the folks that we predominantly work with. Are
white folks are the folks you predominantly work with. Oh. Sounds kind of racist.
White identifying leaders in funding. That being said, the topics that we're going to talk about today, if you work in or are connected to funding and funders, I think, unfortunately, it'll still feel relevant, regardless of whether you are a white identifying funder.
I mean, part of my brain cannot accept that this is a serious talk from serious adults. And yet the other part of my brain knows they mean exactly what they're saying. I feel like I have one foot through the looking glass sometimes, if you know what I mean.
Beyond that, we'll talk about opportunities to engage in that work. We'll do our short taster capital collaborative learning activity, and then we'll get into a brief closing and questions.
I want to have a learning activity. I want to learn something. I want to teach me. I want to learn.
All right. So as Kayla shared earlier, our larger organization is Camelback Ventures, and Camelback's been around for about 10 years and started out and still does by offering a fellowship for BIPOC and undervalued entrepreneurs.
Okay. So you discriminate who gets financial assistance on the basis of their race and or gender and or orientation from our initial introduction. Okay.
And so the two branches of that fellowship are founders who work in education and founders who work with conscious tech.
Conscious tech? Conscious tech? Like AI? What's conscious tech?
And we did just focus on that work for several of the first years of Camelback. And then back in 2018, the Camelback team did something that at the time was pretty revolutionary, and just did a big audit of all of the founders that we'd worked with and their ventures and how they were doing. And one of the main findings of that was that although our founders were equally or outperforming their white counterparts, they were receiving about a third of the funding.
Is that because they weren't white? Or that must be the only factor, right? And that must be the only consideration.
And so that's how Capital Collaborative, our branch of the Camelback team, was born. We work to address funding biases and ultimately move more money to BIPOC-led organizations and diversify power in the funding landscape.
Organizations simply on the basis of the color and or nature of the owners, or were there any considerations for return on investment? I mean, if you are an investment firm of one kind or another, or some kind of investment funnel, presumably the people giving over their money are going to want to see a return, unless they're just willing to write it off because, well, it doesn't matter if the business is successful as long as I can tell myself that I'm contributing to somebody on the basis of their skin color. Right?
So that's where our little Capital Collaborative team sits as part of the larger Camelback Ventures organization. And we'll share more in follow-up about both Camelback broadly and Capital Collaborative more specifically.
While she's pausing and while I have a moment here, a couple more hellos. Noah Asensio, good evening. JMK, good evening. William Stenchiver, good evening.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, I am Jessamine, funder in residence at the Capital Collaborative by Camelback Ventures. And I am going to tell you a little bit about why. Why would a white identifying individual need to engage in formal learning around DEI, around JEDI, racial equity, justice work?
JEDI, I don't know. Why would a white identifying person need to be educated about this? Well, because obviously white people are stupid. White people are inherently racist. White people are inherently discriminatory. White people are inherently just incognizant. Is that a word? I'm going to make that a word. Incognizant. I'm going to leverage my white privilege. Incognizant of the world around them, or that there are other people in the world who don't look like them. And they need to value people on what they look like, or devalue people on the way they look like, and then give them money because of how they look, because obviously they need the money because of how they look. Because how they look means they need money. Am I oversimplifying it?
Whatever the terminology that you want to use to describe this space. As you heard from Hannah, we work with a lot of white funders on
a lot of white funders. Yeah. They don't have names or anything. We just know how to classify them. Okay.
On their journeys as they figure out what they don't know about racial equity and racial justice, and learn how to integrate that knowledge into their work.
Okay. White people, you're inherently stupid. We're going to teach you. Hand over your money. Yeah, I said at the top of this, is the main driver in this, like how to mobilize white identifying individuals. Is it guilt? Is it racial guilt? Is that the main leverage point?
So as we've done that work, we've heard various questions from them about whether it makes sense to put dedicated time and effort towards racial justice training. And as they've shared those thoughts or those doubts, we've also heard reflections from participants as they've come out the other side of training as well.
I can imagine. Yeah, racial justice predicated on skin color. Doesn't that sound pleasant?
And they've shared the value that their learning has led to for themselves and also for their organizations as well. So I'm going to talk you through some of the questions, the doubts that people might have about why a white person might need to engage in racial equity, and what we have heard how people who have done deep engagement, how they would answer those questions.
Okay, great. Questions, answers, concepts, motivations. All right. I love the specificity that is on offer here. Will it be delivered?
So, first question. Shouldn't I just stand back and let my colleagues of color take the lead when it comes to racial equity?
I mean, it would be presumptuous of me as a white person to know how to direct a person of color. Would that not be putting me into a white savior position or a white superiority complex or something? Shouldn't I stand back? Shouldn't I give them the platform and the microphone that they, obviously cannot take on their own? I have to cede it to them.
I don't want to step on any toes. Like, I don't want to be the one thinking, the person charging in and saying I should be in charge.
Yeah, I have been told that white people need to step back and let marginalized communities and communities of color have the platforms. So why shouldn't I not take the lead?
And so this is a very, very valid question, right?
Well, in the ethos of DEI, it's a valid question. To anybody thinking about it for 3 seconds, it's not, but go ahead.
White folks have been centering ourselves for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And structured racial justice learning, what we have heard, can really help white folks reimagine and redefine their role in the funding world.
I have no idea what that's supposed to mean.
So oftentimes we see white participants in racial justice learning go from philosophically aligned with the movement, but standing on the sidelines.
As we've been told to do over and over and over again. It is a sin to walk into a room as a white person to walk into a space of color and attempt to take the lead or attempt to help out or attempt to come in as a savior. And anything that might be interpreted as that, even if it's well-meaning, is also contributing to the problem. I have been told this over and over and over and over again. So why shouldn't I, as a white identifying individual, stay on the sidelines and be a good ally?
2, having clear actions, steps that they're trying to take in their everyday work, knowing that those steps and those actions are appropriate as a white person engaging in racial equity, and also suited to their own skill set. So it's really about figuring out what is the right and appropriate role for you, given your identity, given your position.
Well, don't I have to defer to people of color to tell me where I fit? I mean, is it my job to presume to know my place in the pecking order as a white person? Because again, doesn't that then supersede the agency and the lived experiences of people of color? I mean, I'm just trying to be the best ally I can be here. So you haven't answered the question. Your own question. Okay.
In the world. Next concern that we often hear. What if I say or do the wrong thing?
Like come in and define my own role in the hierarchy? Because microaggressions? Because of unconscious bias? Because of all the landmines that are set up, the sort of abstract, amorphous landmines that I could always step on, even when I'm not intending to, because someone can just decide I'm acting badly because of my skin color and put me in my place? Yeah. What if I say or do the wrong thing? As determined by who? Okay. What do I do? What happens if I say or do the quote unquote wrong thing?
Another very valid concern.
Yes. Well, go on.
And I think what our recommendation would be for anybody who is feeling like this is their concern as a white person thinking about this is look for a white affinity space.
If I think or if I've done the wrong thing, go to the white cordoned off area. You know, where the drinking fountains are.
What we hear from participants who go through white affinity spaces is that in those learning environments, they have the safety to try.
Wait. If I go to a white affinity space, wherein I'm assuming everybody there is white, like me, well, don't I just have a homogenized perspective on the world? Aren't I just in an echo chamber of whiteness that cannot escape itself? It's like the reversal of a black hole. It's just a white hole. So I'm going to learn how best to behave amongst people of color by conferring with white people, the worst kinds of people to know anything about how to interact with people of color. Obviously, I remain confused. So far, 2 different questions that they've asked, and they haven't answered the questions. Oh, it's amazing.
They tell us that they feel emboldened because they have the ability to make mistakes where people understand that they are just learning.
Right. White people are always remedial in their knowledge of how to operate in the world. Right. And other white people understand that because they too know that being white means you're on the lower rung of intelligence and knowledge and wisdom. Right. Okay. Gotcha.
One of the participants of the Capital Collaborative, the cohort we run, put it this way. I'm going to read just a quote from them.
Okay.
They said, "We pushed each other to take the bolder step, have the difficult conversations, and to be honest about our insecurities and vulnerabilities, which compels us to do more."
So it's one big struggle session. All the white people go into a huddle in another room to plan out their strategy for how to talk with and or interact with people of color. And find the best way to communicate and identify with that other group over there in that separate space that we've segregated ourselves from. Like they're another species or something. Wow, that sounds very respectful. Sounds great. Sounds great. You guys do this for a living, huh?
And then just to mention as well, you know, that person brought up the point about insecurities and vulnerabilities.
Uh-huh.
And I think, you know, another version of this concern,
Yeah.
what if I say or do the wrong thing, is also, what if I feel the wrong thing? You know,
what if I feel the wrong thing? What if my emotions are incorrect? I don't know. What do I do if I feel the wrong thing? Like feeling as though I'm being singled out and vilified on the basis of my skin color. I mean, obviously, that is a wrong feeling. I can't feel like that. I can't be the victim of racism. I mean, I'm white identifying, right? So what do I do with this feeling that's obviously incorrect and unfounded?
What if I react to something that I hear in this educational space, and I react negatively, or I don't react how I hope I would react, you know?
Well, I mean, I just have to walk on eggshells around people who don't look like me and be cautious and careful of anything and everything that I say, because, oh my gosh, if I say the wrong thing, I'll be called a racist and I'll be sent back to the white affinity space to relearn what I need to learn about how to interact with people who don't look like me.
You know, and something again that I'll mention that we've seen is that when you find a program that really understands that dynamic.
What dynamic?
What they'll often do is they'll provide an equity coach for you. And that's something, again, we do at the Capital Collaborative. We provide equity coaches, a race-alike coach.
This is a service you provide. Equity coaches, a race-alike coach. Okay, well, I mean, what if I don't identify as, oh, no, never mind. You know, this is, I'm going down a mental rabbit hole here. I'm trying to follow their lead logically, and I don't know if I can do it and escape again. Okay, a race-alike coach. This is a service you provide. Race-alike coach.
To do one-on-one conversations and coaching to help navigate those reactions, those moments when you're like, this isn't how I necessarily want to show up in you know, in reaction to this information, but this is what's happening. I need to process it.
Yeah. Guess what? All you white people need to donate to our businesses because of racial equity. There are disparities in investments between the races, and you guys are always on the winning side because you're white. So give us money because we're not white. And if you don't do that, well, obviously you're contributing to a system of racism, which, I mean, I'm not saying you're racist, but you're certainly contributing to white privilege and white power and white superiority. I mean, we wouldn't want anyone to think that you're some kind of evil person, would you? Are you feeling guilty or ashamed or uncomfortable when I make that, you know, passing accusation of your character? Well, that's wrong. Think, here is a person that looks like you who's going to set you straight so that you give us your money. Do I have this process right at this point? Have I figured it out? Is that the crib note version of this entire PowerPoint presentation?
So the idea is that these spaces are places that are safe to try to learn. Next concern that we often hear. I've already done DEI training. I already did a course. Why would I need to do more?
Yeah, why would I need to do more? I've already heard all of the nonsense again and again and again and again and again. Why do I need to go through it with you guys?
Right?
Yeah.
I've done that. Tick the box.
Yeah.
One thing that I would say about racial equity training
is that is an ongoing process. I'm getting out my psychic powers. It's going to be something akin to the phrase equity work is an ongoing process.
Is that the opportunities are so varied, They're varied by stage of learning.
Oh.
They're varied by the focus of learning versus doing. So maybe it's more about historical context setting versus putting things into action. They're varied by industry specific application. There's a whole bunch of characteristics.
Are there? Really? Can you name a couple?
That you can look at when you think about where you want to do your racial equity training.
Where I want to do my racial equity training. Well, why would I want to do racial equity training in the first place? You still haven't sold me on my desire to participate.
And what I would say to folks that have already done DEI training is there is always something more to learn.
It's an ongoing process. Close enough.
And if you are already a number of steps into your equity and justice journey, I would recommend looking for opportunities that provide more industry-specific knowledge sharing.
Oh, what more specific in any industry do I need to look at somebody's skin color and assess their quality of life, their way of thinking, or their value in society? I mean, I think that's kind of a universal way of thinking about people, isn't it? Called racism. I mean, it can be applied anywhere by anybody at any time. So what's industry specific about that? Except for the whole DEI grift industry.
Those are the spaces where you're going to find opportunities for creative lifetime problem solving, exposure to new ideas and practices that maybe your peers in the industry might come up with.
Racism is neither a new idea or practice. It's very, very old, very basic. Something I had hoped most of us would have advanced past at this point, but apparently if there's money in it, it'll always persist.
Brainstorming and really being able to harness the collective wisdom of other people who understand your work and your industry.
Right, okay.
Next concern.
Okay.
What if my role isn't investment facing? What if my role doesn't include directing funding?
Freudian slip much? Man, what if it doesn't include diverting? I mean directing funding. If my role isn't investment facing, can I do anything substantive? Irate Bear. I don't know. Can you? If you don't have access to money to give to people on the basis of their skin color, what can you do?
In one way or another. Is there anything that I can still do that's still substantive?
Irate Bear.
Very short answer here. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, there is absolutely stuff that you can do.
Such as?
We see people working in operations, people working in finance, people working in talent management, people working in marketing, figure out how to make significant shifts in culture, in policies, in processes, to change those policies, those practices to become more equitable.
So find a way in my role to favor people on the basis of their skin color and disfavor other people on the basis of their skin color. Great.
Or make changes that can potentially even be more impactful than individual funding decisions, especially when those policy decisions, those practice decisions cut across systems. It can shape people's mindsets and potentially determine really big contracts and the way that your firm places its business in other ways, not just the investment pools and portfolios.
Yes, find a way to inject our ideology into every level of your business. Doesn't matter if you actually have control of any funds from the business or not, as long as you're giving due deference to people on the basis of their skin color in your decision making and policies and so on, then you're doing a good thing. Define for me institutionalized racism again.
Penultimate question that we hear is the takeaway, if I participate in racial justice training, is the takeaway that I as a white person should just quit my job so that a person of color can step in?
Yes. The answer is yes. If you actually believe in what you are saying and pushing along, then the answer is yes.
Answer to this one, a little bit more complicated.
Really? Really? Because it's a yes or no question. It's not complicated. If you actually believe in the ideology and the rhetoric you are spewing, then the answer is obviously yes. The only place for a white person is not in a position of power. The only place for a white person is in a position of assistance, as an investor, as a helper, as an ally. If you have a position of authority anywhere at any point, and you are white, and you believe in this stuff, then the only honest option for you to take is to quit and let your position be taken over by someone who is not white. But okay, all right, you say it's more complicated. How much more complicated?
Honestly, right? We have seen folks experience a whole range of realizations, which for some of them is, yes, their conclusion is they feel like they should quit their job and they should leave so that the firm can hire somebody who perhaps has more proximate experience.
No. Hold on. That sounded suspiciously like an area of merit. You're not talking about merit. You haven't talked at all about someone's personal character or merit. You have assessed people and divvied people up on the basis of their skin color. No, sorry, you don't get to make that move. You are too deep into this to make that move. That move is disallowed for you at this point. So nice try, but no escape.
Or brings a different perspective.
No, not perspective, not experience. Unless, of course, and I will at least extend her this possibility, unless, of course, you equate experience and perspective with skin color, because I could see that. You know, based on everything else that's been said so far, I could see that. But why are you now avoiding just saying skin color? Yeah.
But I will say, when those decisions are made, it can take years to do it right.
Years to do it right? Well, what is the right way for a white person to quit their job to allow a person of color to step in? What is the correct way?
Right? Rather than just have a knee-jerk reaction. So we don't see people just quitting the next day after they finish their training.
Would you like them to?
But the majority of folks actually realize that they can be more helpful staying where they are.
Why? I thought the whole point was to elevate people on the basis of their skin color, and white people need to step aside.
Alleviating risks for their colleagues of color.
Alleviating risks for their colleagues of color. You mean their subordinates, right? Because, I mean, they've got a position that's higher than somebody else on the basis of... I'm getting a lot of mixed messages here.
Or consciously using their privilege to direct more money to leaders of color. So the answer here is going to be specific to you, specific to your circumstances, the environment that you work in, where your firm is at the time that you're doing the training.
So you don't have an answer. You asked the question, but you don't have an answer. You're not saying you shouldn't. You're not saying you should. But, if you do, but wait a little bit. Or, don't make us the excuse that you use to quit your job and or use your privilege to, give special treatment to people on the basis of their race. Which is, that's great. Okay.
Last one that I will cover for you. One other concern that we often hear is this going to be depressing and guilt-inducing?
Yes.
Like I need more joy in my life. Not less. I don't need to be weighed down anymore.
Oh, okay. I mean, full disclosure, if that's the phrase I'm looking for here, or maybe more credit where credit is due. At least she's posing these questions. At least she is giving voice to some legitimate concerns and or queries that someone would make after listening to this stuff long enough, the kinds of questions that I've had. So a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't take the time to even give a platform for an opposing viewpoint or a counterpoint to their arguments. She's not doing a very good job of answering those concerns, but I'll give her credit for at least outlining some of them. But yeah, okay, is this not going to be depressing and guilt-inducing? This whole white person bad thing, give money, be better thing.
So, again, fully honest answer here for you.
Oh, okay. Were the other answers fully honest? I mean, maybe they were honest because they didn't have an answer, but okay, what is the honest answer?
This one really is dependent on the program that you choose.
The program I choose? What, as a white person, I have a choice in this? Oh, okay. So it's up to me whether or not I feel depressed or feel induced with guilt. All right.
So as a white person looking for a racial equity training program, all programs will have sessions that are heavy.
Heavy. Describe heavy.
Right, as the nature of the work and you know the context of this issue that we're trying to address, right? Systems of oppression.
Right, you're trying to address systems of oppression by recommending that white people institute a racial hierarchy system in their own companies through their own work. I don't know. You know, living in cognitive dissonance like this, and every time that she asks a question, her own questions on this presentation, and she tries to give something like an answer, I can kind of almost feel like she's stepping towards the edge of having a revelation or having to make a self-admission of just how contradictory and nonsensical this stuff is. But she's a true believer and will keep pressing forward even through the nonsense.
Part of that work is understanding what we're dealing with and reckoning with the full weight of racism.
Right.
And many programs deliberately build fun, community, enjoyment, lightness into the programs too.
Yes, because there's nothing more fun, light, and enjoyable than talking about your place in the racial hierarchy and give us money because we're not white.
And I'm going to read you just one more quote because I'm actually really, really proud of this quote that we had from a woman who went through the Capital Collaborative recently, actually.
Okay.
So she said, I felt like I went through paradigm shifts every hour. But the one thing that really stuck with me was with justice work, there's this feeling that it has to be painful and sad and rooted in shame. It's always supposed to be serious. So people come to it with trepidation. And I really felt, especially in this cohort, that the arc of it was joy. And it followed all the way along. And that's where it ends. And that's the paradigm I want to hold with me.
Stockholm Syndrome. Can we say Stockholm Syndrome? Thank you, sir. Can I have another? Thank you, sir. Can I have another? Talk about just self-flagellating wretchedness. Like, oh, I went through all this pain and this struggle and everything else, but at the end I had joy. Sounds kind of sadistic, doesn't it? Masochistic, maybe. Yeah. Little bit. Does that sound like a healthy situation to our speaker? If it was in any other context, let's just take that whole quote out of context for a moment. Does that sound like a healthy way to live? What if that person was talking about a personal relationship, right? A significant other or a parent? Does that sound like a healthy way to live? Okay.
So there are lots of reasons we can bring up about why we might not want to do the work or we're not sure if it's right for us. But I can tell you, so many folks that we have worked with have found layers of value and community as well.
Yes, yes. I mean, building up a community of wretched, self-pitying individuals based around race. You can build a community around misery, because what's the one thing that misery loves above all else?
In doing racial equity, structured learning as a white individual, particularly in the funding industry.
Oh, yeah.
And with that, I will hand over to my colleague, KK.
Okay.
Thank you, Jasmine. Hi, y'all. I am KK, and I'm part of the Capital Collaborative team. I use they, them pronouns.
I don't care.
We know that white people need to do this work, and we find it especially powerful when they can do it in a safe racial affinity space that allows us as white people to really unpack ourselves and some of those ingrained beliefs.
Just, again, sometimes I have to stop and remind myself, yes, I'm listening to a real person saying real things that they really believe. White affinity spaces. Okay. Lunch counters. Front of the bus. Those were white affinity spaces, weren't they? Let's bring it all roaring back to the present, shall we?
It may seem counterintuitive at times to do anti-racism work as an all-white group.
It really does. It really does seem counterintuitive to do quote-unquote anti-racism work while actively participating in racial segregation. It does seem counterintuitive. How do you manage to square that circle in your brain every day, I wonder?
Or with white facilitators.
Yeah.
But as many folks of color have pointed out, it is the responsibility of white people to not only unlearn our internalized racism, but to help each other do so.
Oh, okay. Sounds vaguely Scientologicalistic.
And these racial affinity spaces offer us the opportunity to speak honestly, bluntly with each other, but also to support each other, coach one another, and maybe ask some of those embarrassing questions without risk of hurting or overburdening people of color.
Right, because people of color are, fragile. Right. And a white person couldn't possibly speak honestly in front of a person of color. Right? Because anything a white person says in front of a person of color is, immediately suspect. So only amongst their own kind can white people say what they mean.
We know, although they often have less power, that people of color largely are asked to take on this work and burden with the majority of it.
Right. Yeah, people of color have less power because of the color of their skin. So if you go in understanding that is the case, that someone with the wrong skin color is inherently powerless or weak or incapable or can't stand up for themselves and have no assertiveness of their own in their own life and their own agency, that's just the way it is.
Our team has learned a tremendous amount from the fellows that we serve and through the racism that they face. And so we believe it is up to us as white people to become experts in our own practice of unlearning this. And so in a little bit, Hannah is going to lead us through an activity that will provide an example of some of the ways that we as white people specifically operate and some of those tripwires that can be more specific to us.
I can't wait. I'm going to have to go through this entire thing. If I get bored with the rest of this, I am at least going to jump to the activity portion of this because I really want to learn. I really want to learn what my tripwires are. I really want to learn how to handle my own inherent white fragility or whatever.
But in the meantime, I would love to go over, put together a little list of some varied trainings and learning opportunities provided by peer organizations across the country.
No, I'm going to skip this. I don't need to go over your list of other organizations or whatever. That's just one big advertisement, and I don't particularly care. So I don't know. Okay, is this activity time?
Activity off.
Awesome. Thanks, KK. All right. So if you've kind of been in sit and get mode, I invite y'all to engage sort of the other half of your brain, because
the other half of oh man, no, my entire brain has been in operation at this point. My entire brain. I've practically been epileptic in trying to understand how you guys function in the world one to another, being such absolute and total racists. But anyway, Alan Thyler, thank you so much for the hiya, Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wowie, wow, wow.
That is a Weebo Jones Dogcat Fox. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it. Hope you're having a good evening. And also, Keldrig, thank you so much. I think I've read this book before. The White Man's Burden. There was a movie called White Man's Burden back in the 90s. John Travolta was in it. And, oh my God, who am I forgetting all of a sudden? Oh, there was someone else whose name I suddenly can't remember. Harry Belafonte. That's who it was. Yeah, Harry Belafonte and John Travolta. And it was this alternate universe where white people were the minority in the country. It was a real education. White Man's Burden. Thank you, Keldrig. Appreciate it. Okay, are we going to engage the other half of my brain? Is it time for the activity? I want the activity.
So we're going to transition into a little bit of a teaser session.
What?
So in our Capital Collaborative programming, we have different types of sessions with different goals, such as community building, learning, and activation to action.
Okay.
And within our learning sessions, as KK highlighted a little bit earlier, some spaces are mixed race.
Oh, mixed race. Okay.
And or led by BIPOC leaders. And others are specifically white affinity learning spaces to give.
Right. There's either segregation or there's, desegregated spaces. Oh, okay.
Our participants a space to be brave and vulnerable and work through topics of white supremacy culture without burdening colleagues of color or hesitating to share experiences.
We have to be very mindful of people's feelings if their skin color is a particular way. They just can't handle it. Can't handle someone else talking or saying something that might bug them, or they decide bugs them.
So I share all of that to say that the session we're going to do a segment of today is an example of the later. So normally we would do this in a white affinity space.
Ooh, she's got Dune on her bookshelf. I can see it right back there. I think I might actually have that edition myself. I just saw that back there. I was like, oh, I recognize that logo. Anyway.
However, I specifically chose this activity for this group because of the funding industry's history and culture, regardless of race, or whether you are a funder or work with funders.
Regardless of race? I thought the whole point of this was because of race.
We know that people interacting with funding are likely to have experienced some of the things we're going to talk through because of the history and just found the way that the funding landscape was created, basically. So keeping that in mind,
can we get to the activity? I want to get to the activity.
The intention here is to give you a sense of what one of these learning spaces might feel like.
Like a white affinity learning space. Okay.
Also have a mini learning opportunity. Hopefully it will, by the end of it, you will feel like this is more accessible and less intimidating, this type of learning and action taking than you might have thought when you joined us today.
I cannot wait. I want to learn how unobtrusive and not stressful at all racially segregated learning spaces can be. So we will have a few minutes at the end to invite questions and share some additional supports of our Camelback and Capital Collaborative teams. So if you do end up with questions or seeking like more support on some of the things that we talk about today, please feel free to jot those down. And if we don't have time to get to them, we're going to share how you can connect with folks on our team. Okay, I can't wait. A couple more hellos. Well, I see people here. Brittany Holland, good evening. Faithless, good evening. Meh, good evening. And You're Ridiculous Lunatic, good evening. Did I miss anybody else in the meantime? I hope I didn't. Alan Thyler, of course. Okay, I think, yes. If I did miss you, if you make yourself known with a hello, I'll try to highlight you on the stream. Oh, well, speaking of the devil, Keeverdam, hello. What are you doing up this hour? Are you working? Stop working. Or maybe you are because you're watching this.
All right. The last thing that I'll say before we dive in is
Yes.
that the resource I'm going to share for this exercise is from an organization we've worked with several times throughout our different Capital Collaborative cohorts called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusiveness Consulting.
Wow. I guess you get exactly what's on the label with that one.
And the leaders at that group allow us to use this resource because they want this information shared with folks who want to learn and make change. They want it spread far and wide.
Yeah, it's open source equity is really what it is.
The learnings, but we ask that you don't do any screen recording beyond the actual recorded session or
whoops.
copy these materials because they were created by that group and we want to make sure they're being fairly compensated and recognized if these are used more formally in the future.
Oh, well, I'm not doing anything formally and you put this up on YouTube in a public space, so I feel no guilt, white or otherwise.
Okay, before we dive in, grab a piece of paper.
Piece of paper? Okay, well, let's see. I guess I'll also need a pen, I'm assuming. Okay, so I got a pen. Got a little notebook. All right. I am prepared. I actually have the materials necessary. Okay.
Pull up a document where you can take a few notes.
Yes. Okay.
Nothing formal, but just somewhere where you can jot down a few thoughts. And we'll just set the intention here that we want to be honest about our own behaviors and our team's behaviors.
Okay, honesty. I can appreciate honesty. Okay.
And to be curious, but ultimately we want to call ourselves into this work. This is not intended to be a call out or gotcha.
No, it's not a gotcha at all. By the way, I am the correct race to participate in this, right?
But an invitation to think about our actions and the impact they might be having.
Okay. I'm ready.
Do the awkward little screen share moment.
I know that all too well. I can empathize.
Okay. So this activity is about exits from race and gender issues.
Exits from race and gender issues. Like, I don't want to talk about this, so I'm going to turn around and walk out of the room, that kind of exit?
So today we're going to be talking about a list of exits and just recognizing when we may have taken them or seen folks on our team take them.
Okay.
Exits are ways society has trained us to take issues of race and gender off the table when they're brought up.
Right. Okay. Is an exit something like, this is irrelevant to the conversation? Is that illegitimate?
While people in advantage groups may experience greater social pressure to take exits or more training to take those in subtle ways, anybody can take an exit regardless of race or power within their organization.
Right. So if I don't want to talk about something, I'm not allowed to not talk about that thing? If I find no relevance to bringing race and gender up in a conversation, I can't dismiss that part of the conversation as irrelevant? What? And okay, I don't know.
So I'm going to read through just some different examples of how we can take exits, how we can divert the discussion or the actions being taken when somebody attempts to bring up race, racism, or gender discrimination in our work.
Yes.
I ask that if I read an exit that you recognize as something you have done or your team has done.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to think of instances where such things have come up at work. At my job, at my company. And I am honestly failing to do so because my company doesn't operate under gender or racial filters. So yeah, fortunately my boss just hires people that know what they're doing. So yeah, and we have, if I have to look at the population of my workplace through a race and or gender lens, we have a demonstrably diverse workforce, except that has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not someone has a job there. Because we have dropped people of all types because they didn't know what they were doing or would not do what they were told to do. And then we kept the people who knew what they were doing and did do what they were told to do. So merit, work ethic, character, But okay, I'll try to imagine such a scenario.
Just note it. It doesn't have to be the full title, but just write yourself a little note so you'll remember what you were talking about when we move to the discussion portion.
Okay.
And then at the end, I am going to ask you to pick 1 to 3 of these exits that you want to focus more on. So if you want to note that as you go, feel free.
Okay. Go ahead. Hit me. Yep.
Why? Okay.
I love how they have a copyright up there. Do not duplicate or distribute. And yet here we are on a YouTube video they put out to the entire world. Okay.
The first type of exit we call a good apple, bad apple. And this is just diverting back to your good intentions, regardless of impact. So, oh no, that's not what I meant, but my intentions were good.
That's irrelevant then? That's an exit? That's not a accusation to the other person making the accusation or defense to an accusation? Okay.
Somebody brings up an issue of race or racism.
It doesn't sound like they're bringing up an issue. It sounds like they're making an accusation. If my response is, but my intentions were good, then someone is accusing me of having done or said something of a racial or gender-based offense, right? That's not an exit. That's a response.
Saying it's already handled. So when somebody brings something up saying, oh, well, we're already fixing that in this way, or we already tried this, so don't worry about it. It's being taken care of.
What if that's actually true? Okay. What is the correct way to... Okay.
I don't believe you yet. So when somebody brings up a concern saying, I need more concrete examples, I need more data.
That's, wait, so that's an illegitimate response? Someone makes an accusation or an allegation about something and you ask for evidence of this, and that's an exit? That's not asking for more details. That's not asking the person to justify their complaint. That's an exit. It sounds like the next part of a continuing conversation. What?
Immediately jumping to actions and tactics. And so as soon as something's brought up saying, okay, well, we're going to fix that by doing this, or, okay, just tell me what I need to do to fix it.
So wait. Trying to pass off or push off taking action like it's already handled is bad. But immediately responding and saying what you'll do is also bad. Golly, it's almost like no matter what action or words I say, I can't win.
And I'll pause on this one and say, I'm not saying you should never take action.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You just told us before. We heard this before. To act, to take action, to be responsive, to listen, on and on. Okay, you're not saying not to act, but
you're probably, some of these you might say, it's nuanced, or maybe it's not always bad to bring something up like this.
Yeah, sometimes it's more complex than that.
That's true.
But if it's true, then why are you listing these things as though they're absolutes?
And we always want to be asking why we're doing something.
And
so these are often used to take race and racism off the table, but we're not saying you can never ask for an action item again. So we recognize that there's nuance here. So if you're feeling kind of a push and pull,
it's because you are very confusing. You're listing these things as behaviors or reactions to avoid. And yet you're saying that it's not a always no, otherwise can't be situation. There is nuance. Okay. Do you know the definition of the phrase cognitive dissonance? if it's not a rule, then why are you listing it as a rule? If it's not inherently a sin, why are you saying these are bad?
Very normal.
Is it?
Acting as a savior or parent figure. So just saying, what can I do to fix this? How?
Yeah, if I'm a person in an authority position and someone comes to me with a complaint and trying to get the other person to offer ideas as to what would alleviate or address the situation. So I'm not supposed to do that, right? That is a wrong action. That is a sin. Or is there nuance?
How can I solve this problem rather than listening to the person who's bringing up the issue or might be more proximate to the problem that they're bringing up?
If I was not the person in a position to affect a solution to the problem, then why would they be bringing it to me in the first place? If I don't need to be a factor in solving the problem, if they can do it all on their own, then what are you talking about? You don't even know what you're talking about, do you? Okay.
Explaining it away. So saying, okay, yeah, that was bad, but that was just a one-off. Or, well, that person that said it isn't a main part of our team, so it was just them, it's not us.
What if all of that is true? What if that's the first time anything like that had ever happened before, or whatever? So if all of these have nuance potentially, why are you putting them on a list of bad behaviors? What?
Waiving responsibility. So, ooh, yeah, that is an issue, but it's not our team's job to solve it. Or that's,
well, maybe it isn't. Maybe I'd be stepping on somebody else's toes. Maybe it's not my realm. Maybe you should take this to HR. I mean, there's a chain of command in most businesses, right? There is a responsibility and authority in different departments. If somebody comes to me and says, I need you to edit this invoice process, I would say, no, accounting should be the only people putting their fingers on editing any of this invoice process, because it's about chain of custody. If we get audited or something and there's a problem in the future, and I have to say completely honestly, I'm not an accountant, I'm not in accounting, I'm not authorized to deal with this stuff, but I did this thing, well, that causes problems. So no, I would not do something that is not in my realm in a business environment. Oh, but there's no nuance, right? Except there is nuance. Or, hi, Columba.
it's not our department.
It isn't, maybe.
HR needs to deal with that.
Yeah. Is that an incorrect response all the time? What? Jesus.
Shifting the focus. So this happens a lot when someone explicitly brings up race and saying like, well, yes, but discrimination against gender is also an issue. So what are we doing about that? Or ageism is also an issue. What are we doing about that?
I insert my previous bewilderments here.
Denying relevance, just simply saying, race or gender is not at play right now. That isn't relevant to this context.
What if it isn't? What if it is demonstrably not a factor, but someone's trying to inject it artificially? I'm not allowed to point out somebody bringing up race and gender just out of whole cloth? Oh, okay. I just have to accept it. I just have to entertain it. I just have to justify someone else's Looney Tunes because they bring up the magic words of race and or gender in a conversation? Okay.
And then lastly, attributing the issue to a quality of the complaint. So saying the person who brings it up is oversensitive, saying they're always playing the race card, basically just taking away someone's credibility.
What if they do always play the race card? What if they are oversensitive? What if a problem actor in and of themselves? Apologies, everybody. My internet decided to die. Okay, well, I don't know how long that lasted. I wasn't quite sure. But, okay. Yeah, I've been having some problems lately with my VPN. Occasionally my VPN decides to just kill my internet for no reason in the middle of things. And then I have to turn off the VPN and suddenly my internet comes back. I don't know. This is a relatively new phenomenon. I've never had this problem before with my VPN, but there you go. So I apologize for the clip there. I will go back after this and I will edit out whatever blank space there was to help anybody watching in the future avoid otherwise. So yeah, that was technical difficulties beyond my control. Okay, everybody. I think I'm just going to have to call it here. Apparently, my internet has decided to completely poop the bed, as it were. My VPN is causing me all types of issues. I can't tell if I'm still broadcasting. I can't tell if you can still hear me. I apologize for those of you that were here live and for those of you listening in the future. I'll try to edit out the blank spots and give an explanation somehow in there. But anyway, everyone, there you go. For whatever it was worth, white identifying investors, racial justice, guilt trip city, and racial affinity spaces. If we learned anything, I don't know what we learned, except that I've got some things I have to figure out with my internet and or VPN. So anyway, everybody, thank you guys so much for joining me for this ambush stream. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Really do appreciate it. Hope you all have a good rest of your Friday evening, for as much as there is left of it. Hope you all have a good weekend ahead of you. And I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.